Today, let's make a tulip bag perfect for spring. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are going to be making a tulip bag. So this is actually from a free pattern I found on Pinterest, and I will include a link to that Pinterest board that has this in case you're interested. And I am going to be making this for specifically gardening purposes. So I'm going to be using a waterproof canvas for the inside lining, as well as two different types of more substantial canvas for the outside of the bag, just to give it a little more structure so it'll do well outside. So now for this pattern, the way it worked, since this was a free pattern from somebody else's website, is you had to print off 3 different pieces that go together to create this circular shell-like effect. Now the big thing with this pattern is that it really relies on asymmetry. And what I mean by that is it's the direction of the pattern pieces need to be the correct way to get this all to line up. So as you can see, I have the right side of this blue piece of fabric facing up, and then I have the right side of this other piece of fabric facing up as well. And we need these to be in the same direction, so the right side of the fabric for both is both facing the same direction. And then for my lining, it's going to be flipped. So the right side is going to be matching the right side of the outside piece of the fabric. So the right sides are together and cutting this out, and then I'm going to be cutting out 2 pieces for the lining. It's very similar to how I did 2 pieces for the outside of the bag. So basically, the lining is going one direction and the outside fabric is going another direction. Next, it was just time to add my markings as well as start to really sew this up. So as you can see here, we have this straight edge, and we are going to be matching it down at the corner all the way up to where the next marking was to show us where it goes in place. So I just used chalk to mark that for myself. Now, in addition to the lining and the exterior portion of the bag, you did need to cut out some batting or some fabric fleece. I ended up using batting, and you just want 2 pieces of that. It does not matter the direction, as you're not going to be seeing it. It goes on the inside, so it's just 1 piece on one side of this and then 1 piece on the other side. So you can see I am just taking where that original pin seam was, and I am just putting this on there so the batting is on the wrong side of the fabric. Now we're going to be repeating those exact same steps for pinning this straight edge up with our lining. So I'm just going to be matching these. Now, because I am using that waterproof fabric, I am going to be using quilting clips for this portion instead of using pins. And if you want more information about working with waterproof fabric, I do have a whole video up that I will be sure to link in case you're interested. Once I have all of this pinned though and ready to go, I'm then able to take the seam for both the lining as well as the outside of the fabric that will be including the batting, just to hold everything in place and to begin starting our bag. So once those seams are done, it is then time to do the next seam. So this is very similar to that other seam we just did, matching that straight edge for the other side of your fabric to the curve. So one way that you can just check that everything is good with this is if you fold this, so at the bottom you see we have that straight edge, you get this tulip shape at the top. So if you have pinned up everything correctly, you took that first seam correct, you should be able to get the makings of what will look like that tulip shaped bag. And you can repeat this exactly the same for your lining. The direction of the curve may just be slightly different for where we're pinning it up, but now we will then just go and take both of those. So you can see that we are ready to take both these seams and really make the overall body of the bag start to come together. Now it was time to work on the straps. In the pattern, nothing specifically had dimensions for the strap, so I did 4 inches by 20 inches, and I did 2 straps for this, and I found that this worked really well for the sizing that I was going with. Now to put these together, again, there wasn't too much instruction on this, so what I did was I treated this very similar to like bias binding. So I folded this all in half, taking that crease, and then I opened the crease and then folded each of the edges into where that middle crease was, and then just used quilting clips to fold all of that up. I thought that this created a really substantial strap, especially since I was using sturdier fabric. And then I took a seam on either edge, about 1/8 of an inch in or so, to really create a nice strap that I'd be able to use. If you wanted longer straps or shorter straps, you could definitely adjust the measurements though. Once those straps are complete, it is then time to match them with right sides together where the markings are that you created earlier. So I'm just going to be putting one strap, and then I will be repeating this for the other strap as well, matching it into the bag. And this is more of just a placeholder, as we are actually going to be sewing these straps and the lining in at the same time. So once you have all of your straps pinned in place, you are going to want to put those straps inside your bag. And I will show you kind of what I mean by that is we are going to be putting them so that they are in the bag. So when you look down, you can see that the straps are in. And then I'm going to be taking my lining and I'm turning this right side out. So this is the correct side of my lining. And I'm going to be matching that into the bag. So the right side of the fabric for the outside is matching the right side of the lining. And I'm just going to be using quilting clips to pin all of this in place all the way around the top portion of the bag. So this, when we take this seam, we're going to be able to sew together the lining to the outside of the bag as well as sewing those straps on. So this is kind of a big step for this bag to kind of bring everything together in one piece. So now I'm just going to go through and take that seam all the way around, being careful, making sure that I'm really sewing over the straps, the lining, and the outside of the bag. So once that seam is complete, I'm just going to go through and clip the curves, and what this means is I'm just going to be cutting out these little triangles to give my fabric a little bit more wiggle room when it comes time to turning this right side out. So here is what my bag currently looks like. It's getting that tulip shape and it's looking really nice. So now we need to focus on the bottom portion of our bag. So to do this, we are going to be turning this back so that the right sides of the fabric are together on either the outside of the fabric as well as the lining. And then I'm just going to be matching up this long edge on the bottom and taking a seam for the entire exterior portion and doing the same for the lining, except leaving about a 4-inch gap in the middle. Now, the bigger a gap that you leave in the middle for the lining, the easier it will be to turn right side out, but then you will need to hand sew it or machine sew it closed when we get the whole bag complete. So that's just something to consider, making sure you're leaving a good sized gap that you're able to turn this bag completely right side out. Now for the outside of the exterior portion, for that one you can just sew that all the way through. Now it's time to build out our corners, so I am just going to be pressing these down to create a straight seam I'm able to go through, and repeating this for each of the 4 corners that I will then be sewing all the way across. This is going to allow me to have my bag have a little bit more dimension and be able to stand up on its own instead of just being kind of like a 2-dimensional flat surface. So this is going to allow us to have a little bit more stability in our bag and have it to have a little more body and shape. This is just going to be a straight seam though, and of course I don't think I've mentioned it yet, but every time you're doing a seam, be sure you're back stitching at the beginning as well as the end so that's nice and secure. So now it is time for the moment you've probably been waiting for. We are going to be turning our bag right side out. So you're just going to be pushing the fabric out through that hole that you created in the lining, and here's what our bag looks like, and now it's just time to top stitch. Now for the top stitching, the pattern specifically mentioned, top stitching where those 2 fabrics come together. I found this a little difficult to do, and I'm only going to be top stitching the curve at the top of the bag, as I think that gave it a really nice touch doing it that way. So I've just put some quilting clips on it to make sure that I know where I'm going to be pinning and sewing all the way around. But of course this is an optional step in a way, like if you didn't want to top stitch you didn't have to, but it does just give the bag a little bit more of a professional look to it. And with that done, we are done using our machine for the sewing, and now it's just time to add a little snap, which again, this could be completely optional. I decided to add a button with my snap just to give it a little bit more life to it, and then you will want to hand sew the lining of the bag as well for where that opening was. So here's what my bag currently looks like. It is so fun, it's so cute, and it's ready for spring. And for mine, using this waterproof fabric as well as the sturdier fabric on the outside will allow it to be perfect for any gardening. So I did use this bag and take it to a tulip farm, so the tulip bag at the tulip farm, and it worked perfectly. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next time. Happy spring!